Well, it's no secret that then candidate Donald Trump was an unorthodox campaigner, but many thought that larger forces and the power of the White House, if you will, would keep him in quote-unquote check. But as Charles Krauthammer puts it, quote, Donald Trump's character, volatility, impulsive, often self-destructiveness have not changed since the campaign, but it seems as if the guardrails of our democracy, Congress, the courts, the states, the media, the cabinet, were things within bounds that came in the past 10 days. The country is now caught in the internal maelstrom that the mind of Donald Trump has created. He's talking about chaos, and he goes on to say that the guardrails are not holding. So the big question is Charles Krauthammer right? Here to discuss, Jillian, Melchior, Adriana, Cohen, and Rick Grenell. Rick, I'll start with you on this. Essentially what Charles Krauthammer to me seems like he's saying is that the founding fathers did not prepare for President Donald Trump, and so all of the safeguards to our republic aren't working.
Well, the way I would put it is the status quo in Washington, D.C. isn't comfortable with Donald Trump. And isn't the reason why Donald Trump was elected president simply because he is the bull in the china shop? Look, I think that we've got a real big problem in that Washington, D.C. does not understand the outrage outside of Washington, D.C. They don't understand that we're really frustrated with politicians who say silly things, who don't think about us, who go there forever and are chairman for 20 years. We don't want professional politicians. We want the Jeffersonian democracy that talks about going to Washington, making some laws, and then leaving and living under those laws that you helped establish.
Right.
And I think what we're trying to do, and if you look at why Donald Trump won, it's because the Midwestern Union vote, because these men and women who are working hard in the Midwest, they feel like Washington is completely broken. So I don't really buy the status quo screaming and hollering that Donald Trump is breaking the glass. I'm glad he is, actually. I think that's why he was elected.
Jillian, I mean, some people equated the election of Donald Trump to a revolution, and a revolution by those very people Rick just described who have been ignored by both parties, the elites who have been in control for so long.
Look, this was a huge, I think, political opportunity for the Republicans to get a constituency that they didn't have before. You bring up the union vote. But I think what we're seeing now is a crisis that doesn't have that much to do with media bias. I mean, obviously that's a factor, but we're seeing a crisis that's of Donald Trump's own making. He's not the one, or the media is not the one that had an inconsistent message coming out of the White House. The media is not the one that chose to surround himself with pro-Russia people. These are all things Donald Trump chose.
What pro-Russia people are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about, well, for starters, Manafort, who is advising Yanukovych in Ukraine, a Putin puppet.
But right now, though, not anyone who currently is involved in the White House. You can't make that claim, or you wouldn't make that claim just yet.
But there's been quite a great deal of scandal, and I think you can't distance what happened during the campaign, the advisors that he chose from who he is, essentially. Now, what Krauthammer was saying, basically, was that the GOP has thrown away this opportunity, but that Democrats, by pursuing getting rid of the president by the 25th Amendment, would be doing a real threat to democracy. They'd essentially be setting a precedent for an executive branch coup, and that's not healthy either. That's a bigger mistake than a flawed candidate.
Adriana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to say that I believe a lot of these crises that Jillian pointed out are manufactured. I mean, we could spend an hour on the show talking about the fake news stories that the media is pushing so that they could get control of the House and the Senate in the midterms and then win the next 2020 election. This is a partisan politicians, and so many liberals and media who are pushing false narratives for political gains. That's really what this is all about.
Adriana, do you like the idea that President Trump is destroying the status quo? Isn't that what the American people actually wanted him to do?
Exactly. The status quo, as Rick pointed out, wasn't working. It's not working for millions of Americans, and that's why we saw so many people. So many people voting for Donald Trump. There were people during the primary here in Boston, Massachusetts, waiting in freezing cold weather to vote for Donald Trump in the primaries. I mean, Democrats, swaths of them all over the country voted for the first time for a Republican because the status quo isn't working.
Yeah.
Look, what we just heard from the left here is that Donald Trump should be impeached because he hired Paul Manafort a long time ago?
No, that is unequivocally not what I said.
Well,
that
let me
is unequivocally
finish.
not what I said.
Okay, first of all, before you jump in, let me finish my point.
No, you just said what you think I said, but that's not it. I'm in fact saying that impeachment through the 25th Amendment would be catastrophic.
this is what the left does, is they shout down opinions that they don't like. Just because you shout me down doesn't mean that I'm going to stop speaking. It doesn't mean that my opinion is any less valid. What you guys have to be able to do is listen to alternative opinions. Then when you have a chance, you can speak, but shouting people down is unacceptable.
That's a really charming lecture. That's a very charming lecture when you say
the only example that you gave was Paul Manafort.
No, I actually said that there are a lot of problems that are of Trump's making, among them the inconsistent message that has come out of. I did not say collusion. That is something that has not been proven, but I do think the Trump administration has had a problem with consistency of message. You've got Trump officials going out and saying one thing. I brought that up as well.
With Russia.
You know, I think that's a real problem.
Guys,
different messaging points are a different subject than what you said. You were saying Russia connections, and then you said Paul Manafort.
I thought it was
one second, guys. 1 second. Finally, Rick, we've got to wrap it up, but I do want to ask, you're excited about the notion of shattering the status quo. The bottom line is those guardrails maybe need to be taken down or readjusted. That's your opinion.
Yeah, no, I worked on Capitol Hill. I know Washington, D.C. well, but I don't live there. And I can tell you unequivocally that any politician, any elected official who touches the third rail of taking down the status quo, of changing the bureaucracy, and the magnitude that Donald Trump is doing, the swamp is going to swing back.
All right, guys.
So I think that we've got to be very clear about that.
We've got to leave it there. Thank you all very, very much.